Thank you for staying with us on The Conversation. Now, the 19th of August 2025 was World Humanitarian Day. And on that day, we were reminded that beyond headlines, the people risking their lives across Africa are our neighbors, colleagues, and friends, and not anonymous statistics. Now, in places like Sudan, South Sudan, Nigeria, and the DRC, local aid workers are increasingly the ones paying the highest price while trying to deliver food, medicine, and shelter. Now, the African Union's leadership paid tribute to their courage and called on governments and armed actors to stop treating humanitarians as targets and also to uphold the laws that are supposed to protect them. And at the same time, aid organizations have warned that money is drying up, funding is drying up. Some reports funding shortfalls approaching 40%, which means that it will be less help for families and communities who are also stretched thin. So humanitarian leaders in countries such as Nigeria are pushing for more than short-term handouts. They want sustained investment in health, education, livelihoods, and mental health support, and real steps to strengthen and protect local responders. And now to speak to us on this, we are joined by Isa Sanusi, his country director, Amnesty International Nigeria in Abuja. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on The Conversation.
Thank you for having me this evening.
It's a pleasure. Now, so the UN says that a record 383 aid workers were killed, especially in 2024, and 265 have been killed so far in 2025. How do you explain the level of carnage against people clearly marked as humanitarians? And speak to us about the importance and significance of World Humanitarian Day as well.
Well, let me start by saying that the World Humanitarian Day is very important for all of us because the world now is facing crisis from the Middle East to Sudan, and then when you go, there was a short crisis between Pakistan and India. There was also a crisis between Cambodia and Thailand. So the whole world is engulfed in so many crises, and this crisis have been leaving behind huge humanitarian disaster. And the Humanitarian Day is a very important day to celebrate the people who dedicate their lives to recovering these areas and making sure that people affected by this crisis restored and recover their lives and continue to live with dignity. We know that the conflict, especially in the Democratic Republic of Congo, has consumed a lot of lives and is still not over yet, even though there was a pause. But we know that Democratic Republic of Congo continues to be a point of humanitarian disaster for many years and many decades. And people continue to be displaced. We know that in Nigeria, we also have a similar problem. Therefore, this day is very important to celebrate the people who dedicate their lives to protecting these people, helping them to cope with displacement, helping them to cope with the impact of conflict in which many people lost their families. Therefore, this is a very important day, especially for us also in Nigeria, where we are seeing conflict across the Northwest, across the North Central, and other places where hundreds and thousands of people have been displaced.
Okay. Now, Secretary General Antonio Guterres also warned that the rules and tools exist. So what exactly is missing, is political will and also moral courage. So which states or even actors are failing to show that that particular moral courage that the Secretary General is talking about in Africa today? Which countries?
Well, I can't say exactly these are the countries, but you know what happened recently? We see a situation whereby aid is becoming dry, and many countries are withdrawing or diverting money that is dedicated to aid and aiding humanitarian crisis to buying arms. We are now facing a situation where,
especially in Sudan, which has been said to be the second worst country, for killed aid workers so far.
Yes, Sudan's case is a very strange thing in the sense that many countries have been accused of playing a part. There was huge allegation, and even Amnesty International has done a research that implicated the United Arab Emirates in that country. And we know that other countries also are implicated, like Turkey and others. Therefore, there are countries that are accused of playing a role in creating the current humanitarian disaster in that country. Unfortunately, the world is not showing enough courage, is not showing enough willpower to challenge these countries and stop the atrocities and stop the killings. Because even right now, the killings are ongoing. And the saddest part is that even aid workers are not spared. If we look at what is happening in Gaza, if we look at what is happening in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Therefore, the world has to have the guts, the world has to have the audacity to say these atrocities have to stop and we have to end war. The world can live without any war at all. The wars happening all over the place and the conflicts and the killings are a sign of our failure as human beings to address our problems, settle our differences, and live together in peace.
All right, now, but are there immediate protections, that can be put in place to stop the killing of aid workers? Because even OCHA reports that attacks are rising, especially in West and Central Africa, and so far, 18 humanitarian workers have been killed in 2025 in that particular region. What must the regional governments do differently to protect the staff on the ground?
Well, we have to continue to make it very clear to all parties in these conflicts that attacking or harming aid workers is a war crime, and they have to understand that war crimes have very severe consequences, and those who committed them will be put to justice and they will have to pay for their acts. Therefore, we have to make that very clear. You remember even Boko Haram slaughtered a number of aid workers. And the reason why they do these things is because they want to put pressure on every side. They want to put pressure on humanitarian workers to withdraw from conflict areas, and they want to use those killings and attacks on humanitarian workers to discourage humanitarian workers from going to those places. And we have to make sure that all those who are found to have killed humanitarian workers, no matter who they are brought to justice so that it will serve as an example for others so that it will never happen again.
All right. Now, it's so sad that, many of the victims are national staff serving their own countries and their own communities. Why do you think that local correspondents, still are so exposed while international staff are often safer?
Well, every organization has its own operational rules and guidelines, but I believe that it is horrible, it is unacceptable to have a difference in terms of safety and welfare between national and international staff, between so-called experts and local hire. We believe that this is a discrimination, and this kind of discrimination is unacceptable, and we must condemn it. And all those organizations that do this kind of apartheid system of hiring people, they have to be called out, because all lives have the same value and all skills have the same importance and value. Therefore, it is unacceptable for any organization to provide better protection for their international or expert staff while leaving their local hire vulnerable. And sometimes they even employ them with very suspicious, unacceptable, discriminatory conditions of service that expose them to all these dangers. We believe that organizations that do this should be condemned directly, and we have to call them out, and we have to have a mechanism in which we make sure that in the humanitarian space, there is no any organization that is behaving in this way. No organization can do this, and this is unacceptable, and we have to fight it. All of us have a responsibility to fight it.
Okay. Now, earlier you talked about funding, and we know that humanitarian leaders have actually warned that funding is plummeting. Some outlets have cited drops of up to 40%. So how do you keep aid running when, there is no money, or money continues to diminish? Because if donors cut funding, whose lives are we choosing not to save?
Well, on my own part, I just want to say that we have to, in the first place, we have to make sure that these conflicts that create these humanitarian disasters that require aid don't happen at all. We have to stop them in the first place. These conflicts are not part of life. They happen because some people make them possible. Therefore, in the first place, all those nations, all those countries, all those places where there are conflicts, they have to understand that these conflicts are unnecessary and are a sign of failure of dialogue and a sign of the failure of humanity. We have to stop these conflicts in the first place. And secondly, countries now, especially the powerful countries that invest a lot in aid, like US and UK, are now withdrawing a lot of their aid and directing it towards buying arms. And they are creating more or less an arms race, whereby countries are trying to outsmart or out-compete each other in terms of procurement of killer equipment, drones, and other equipment and other weapons. And those monies are always taken from the funds specifically provided for funding aid. And this is an irony, whereby aid is now taken away and directed at buying arms to kill more people and create more disaster. This is really unfortunate and is a shame on the whole of humanity. And we have to make sure that our world is safer and all these conflicts are resolved, and make sure that, we have the magnanimity, because even all fingers are not equal. Therefore, we have to know that there are weaker parts of the society. There are countries that could not support people who are affected by conflicts, and they need support. And those countries supporting them are not doing it in vain, because they are helping to make our world better. Therefore, we will implore these countries to restore what they have withdrawn in terms of aid, so that those people affected by these conflicts will continue to live with reasonable dignity, because without that aid, the world will be plunged into more conflicts. And even the nations that are safer and without these conflicts will be directly or indirectly affected by the fallout of these conflicts.
Okay, Mr. Sanusi, now local NGOs have actually said that protection cannot be bought only with trucks and cash, that it needs political negotiations and local agreements, especially in places where there's severe conflict. How do humanitarian agencies balance the need to stay in those dangerous areas in order to help people with the duty to protect their staff?
Well, I believe that every organization should have the responsibility to protect its staff, because the staff in the first place cannot render any humanitarian intervention if they are not alive. You are only a humanitarian if you are alive. When you are killed or disabled, there is no way you can be able to deliver any humanitarian aid. Therefore, we have to focus attention on those who are fighting in these areas of conflict. And we have to continue to tell them that they have to comply with the international humanitarian law. And that international humanitarian law says that they should not in any circumstance, for whatever reason, they should not attack people working to provide humanitarian aid in conflict areas. We have to make it very prominent, and the world has to set an example with other countries, with other violators, because if an example is not set, people will continue to attack humanitarians, kill them, and at the end of the day, make delivering humanitarian aid impossible. And that will plunge our world into more crisis. Therefore, we have to have that system that makes sure that no matter what, in whatever circumstance, no any group, no any fighting force can attack humanitarian workers, and organizations have a responsibility to make sure that they protect their staff without discrimination.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Isa Sanusi, for your time and for speaking to us on this. Isa Sanusi is Country Director, Amnesty International, Nigeria.